That would be great. Recording started.
Yeah.
No. I do that in karate too. I go into class with my glasses on my head, and all my students say, "What are you doing?" All right. Well, we'll get started. I'm sorry to have gotten started a little bit late. My name is Deborah Kiak-Franson. I hail from the University of Colorado at Boulder, where I'm the director of academic technology. In all of my copious free time, I co-direct the Colorado Coalition for Gender and IT, which is, and I apologize in advance for the acronyms, which is affiliated with the National Center for Women in IT, ncwit.org. So ncwit.org is the website that I'll be referring to you today. And I'm here to give some effective practices about how to recruit and retain women in IT and computer science courses. The view I'll be taking is, even though I'll be giving some specific examples of what you can do in your classroom, I'm also going to be talking about partnerships and teamwork or team activities that you can use to make changes at the program or campus level as well. I just blanked on what I was going to say for that one. That's okay. But what I'd like to do is hear a little bit from you and about what you were expecting. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to think about what you're going to say, because I'm going to give you 10 seconds. And you're going to give me your name, where you're from, and why you're here. That's a lot in 10 seconds. Think haiku, not epic poem. And then we'll go around the room. Okay, let's hit it. Who wants to start? Wonderful, thank you.
Constance Connor, instructor of computer science, State College of Texas.
And you're here because you have a cookie or freshman?
Well, you know, did anybody read the article yesterday? And was it the Chronicle of the New York Times, Berkeley, where all of our students, because we are San Francisco, hope to go. And their school of engineering, which includes computer science. 95% of their students, 95, Asian white men. 95%. Okay, I despair. I'm here for group therapy.
All right. I'm here for group therapy. Thank you. And?
Hi, my name is Amanda Lynn. I'm from the Advocate College up in Pasadena, or down. I'm here because what I do is work on a program that develops internships for ICT students out of Trinity College, and we received a Perkins grant to help financially needy students. Therefore, I'm just looking at ways to recruit, underserved population into the ICT and get them interested, try out our internship program.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so Constance with group therapy, Amanda with recruitment.
Michelle Karamosco, I'm the Assigned Services Manager at PCC Confer. I'm here to record all the wonderful things that are going on and to prove my department the technical help desk for client services when we train people so that women in 50s and 60s, if we can do it, having hot flashes, you can also do it.
Okay, so it's Constance, Amanda, Michelle, group therapy, recruiting, and support. How's that? Yes.
I'm Melissa Green from College of San Mateo, and I have different experiences depending on the class. So I know that in my online classes, I retain women much more than men. In the traditional face-to-face, of course there are fewer students who are female, but it's hard to keep them in. They tend to blame themselves when they can't do it, whereas the guys blame me. You must have, more strategy.
Good. And tell me your name again?
Melissa.
So Michelle, Melissa, 2 M's. Melissa, Michelle. Okay. Amanda, Constance. Okay. Let's go over here.
Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Rowland with the Career Matters Project. We're based out of Oakland. We work statewide in California with California community colleges, and we're documenting. I'm particularly interested because of some documentation work that we're going to be doing, strategies that help youth who may not be college-bound, underrepresented demographic groups consider careers at ICC. Particularly interested in anything you might be talking about, strategies to be more inclusive, to help first generation youth be thinking about careers.
All right. Hope I can do that. So, Teresa, Melissa, Michelle, Amanda,
Yeah, I'll forget you all by tomorrow.
I'm Olivia Hereford. I'm with the Mississippi.
yes, I think I came to you. Yeah.
I'm Associate Director, and I am here because next big task on my list, along with the is to put together a diversity toolkit for faculty, counselors, and administrators for attracting and retaining and making sure that underrepresented youth in IT are successful, and you and NCZ are one of the many resources that I want to bring.
Wonderful. Thank you, Olivia.
I'm a for Women in Trade, Technology, and Science, and we're a national organization that helps educate exposure gender gap for women and girls and just sharing that. Wonderful. So it's great to hear from my colleagues.
Yes. I came to your presentation this morning. I really did.
I collected it.
I'm going to be Teresa, Melissa, Michelle, Amanda, and then we'll come back around here so I don't get too confused. Hopefully there's alliteration someplace because I don't always help you. Go ahead, because this is supposed to be a haiku. You can come to sign it. Give the haiku version, say who you are, where you're from, and
I'm here. I just practically lots of college and computer applications, and I've been working in this industry a long time, and I'm always encourage you to come into the field for anything I can.
Wonderful.
To do that.
Great. Say your name again.
Carrie donating.
Carrie Teresa. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. You're cool.
Rita Daly, Open Courseware Consortium and Philadelphia Community College. Long time career, 20+ years in software engineering and management, and saw a lot of young women enter the field with me and a lot leave. And less are entering now than they were 30-some years ago. So a trend that I think is going the wrong way.
I do too. Thank you, and good evening.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Steve Singer from Kapi'olani Community College, I'm in Hawaii. And
I'm sorry.
I'm the writing program coordinator there. And I attended the...
My workshop, I started out there.
Yeah. Well, I was like, Oakland, their office is in Oakland. About 4 or 5 years ago, wonderful.
Those students like me back or something.
Several years ago, I got a Perkins grant and was working on diversity in IT and get a promotion for women involved in the IT field. I thought it was a little bit successful, and then we got cut. Women in IT were not considered non-trad for us. And so as a result, we could not use any of that money, not even the non-traditional monies. I thought it was absurd. But anyway, I wasn't allowed to access any of that money, so I was like, I passed along to another CTE program coordinator, not IT. And let it go. But I've been trying to get more really involved in IT. Last semester, I'm sorry it's on. After this, I was incredibly encouraged. For the first time in 17 years of teaching in IT, I've had more women in a classroom, a class that I taught than men. And I was so happy. I really was. Because these guys kind of settled down. They were civilized. I looked at my enrollments. Our semester starts Monday. Looking at my enrollments for coming here. And I looked back to like 20% women.
May I ask you what class that is?
It was a web development class. Because I was asking other faculty if they had seen something similar. They had not. But in my class, they had 13 women and 12 men. This semester now, they're 20 guys.
We'll help you. All right, if you want to help us, I was trying to just when I was looking at my enrollment, I thought, oh, I thought you turned the corner. But it was
You didn't have to graduation or anything. Or you didn't start any students doing flip-flop and that. Well, we have the introductions first, and then we'll go to some ideas. I think that's great. Steve, thank you. And?
I am Lisa Connor. I'm doing a presentation tomorrow in this room at 1:30. And I'm from Education Training and Research Associates, which is a nonprofit down in West Valley. We have an NSF grant where we've been working with 15 different community colleges in California to get some new data about why they do or do not pursue CS-related degrees at four-year universities. So if you're interested in hearing about that, come tomorrow if you can. And otherwise, I'm just here to learn more about what everybody has been doing and has to say, and I think it's very interesting.
Thank you, Lisa.
I'm James Cassiano, and and I'm one of the co-PIs on the grant, and I also teach at several campuses in the Bay Area, and have nothing to do with IT. And I'm here to float along with Olivia to figure out how to do it.
Great. Thank you, Lisa.
I also don't have anything to do with ICT, which is probably why I'm sitting next
Okay.
to her.
All right.
Larry Chan, coordinator of the Environmental Control Technology Program at Community College. So some of you might be more familiar with heating, ventilation, air conditioning. We also have a new program in building automation, which actually does have a strong IT component in it. Get that new program off the ground. I probably don't need to tell you that there's a severe underrepresentation in the building trade, so that's why I'm here.
Okay. Do you watch Community at all?
I've heard of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You do have to watch. You do have to watch it because it's a beautiful, beautiful episode of people who with the HVAC people. Gorgeous, gorgeous episode that you do need to look up. Okay, thank you, Larry. Yeah.
I'm Margaret Dow. I'm an instructor in computer information systems at Carson Hills College, which is in Southern California. I'm here because most of my programming classes, I only had one or two female students. I was like 20 students. So I'm interested in how to recruit and retain.
Thank you, Margaret.
I'm John Davis. I work for a small, as an instructor for a small nonprofit based in Oakland Discharge Center. And the reason why I'm attending this is our organization helps individuals transition into the IT industry. But I'd like to get some ideas on how to help women enter the industry.
Great. Well, we can do that. And I think, too, one of the reasons I wanted to do introductions is that we're going to learn a lot from each other today. We're already hearing some good ideas about, have you asked your students where they're coming from and why they're there? And so that was one of the reasons for the introduction. So the other thing I'd like to hear from you is just very briefly, I know what the numbers are in Colorado. I didn't have time to go into iPads and do it for all of the country and to break it down. But what are the percentages right now of women in your courses or programs? Just shout it out. I've heard, you said 5%, Margaret, correct? So 1 out of 20, 20%?
That's what the average is.
Yeah. What about the others?
What do you have? Schools on average is really about 30%.
30%? Good. Any others higher, lower? And have the numbers gone up or down over the last 5 years? Little up? Little tick up? Okay, good to know. Yes?
I can skew the data.
So please do.
I teach Microsoft Excel, and I actually have more women in my classes than I do men.
Interesting. Although that's not surprising, and the web design is not surprising either. Women do tend to concentrate in the productivity software and then in the multimedia as well. And that's, NC-WIT was actually born from the observation that on the CU Boulder campus, there were a couple programs going on at the same time, and one was attracting women, at 1.80% women, and that was the Technology, Arts, and Media program. The computer science program was attracting, 20% women. And so they wanted to say, they're drawing from the same population, what's going on here. So that's how NC-WIT came to be. But what I wanted to do is just recognize that I'm pretty much preaching to the choir here. You all know that there's a problem. You wouldn't be in this room if you didn't think, something's not quite right with 5% women. We know it's probably 50-50. But actually, if we look at some of the numbers, this is one of the handouts that you have. And I'd like you to look at particularly at that red box. NC-WIT is comprised of member organizations that feel that there really is a problem and that it has dire consequences. That if we don't have diversity in IT and computing, then we're not going to have good technology design, we're not going to have good technology services. Are there more handouts? Did they go later? If you could just have those forward, that would be great. We're not going to have good technology, we're not going to have good technology service, we're not going to have good technology support if the IT workforce really doesn't represent the population that it's serving. This one is, for me, there's also a workforce issue. Right now we've got, or when we look ahead at 2018, 1.4 million job openings are projected. We know that based on what we've got now in our pipeline, we might be able to fill 29% of those jobs. And so there's going to be a real gap in the number of jobs that are available and the number of jobs that need to be filled and the number of graduates that can fill them. One of the ways to bump that number up is to recruit more women into the field. And so that's when NC-WIT goes out and talks to people, there are different arguments that it uses. And I'm mentioning these because you may have to use these on your own campuses. One is the technology design support and services aren't good without a diverse workforce. One, we don't have enough people to fill the workforce, so then you can appeal to the government agencies and say, hey, if we don't have these jobs filled, we don't have, this work won't get done. The third piece that unfortunately falls off, unfortunately for an old feminist like myself, is the equity issue. For whatever reasons, and a lot of people have told me, well, personal choice. Women don't want to be in IT. It's not a problem. It's their choice. So why are you making such a big deal out of it? One of the equity big deals is that women are not participating in a real high-paying, flexible industry. And so that's a real shame. However, they are participating in lots of other technical or science or STEM fields, primarily biology, biochemistry, maybe not so much mathematics, but you can see on this by the number sheet that we're just not filling any of these positions, and we don't have the women in the pipeline coming up. To give a personal example, and I have people on my own campus say like, what's the big deal? But last year I was in a meeting and I looked around and the Mikes outnumbered the women 2-to-1, the Johns outnumbered the women 3-to-1, and the Davids outnumbered the women 4-to-1. Now we do have a preponderance of Johns, Mikes, and Davids in our group, which is weird and uncommon, but it was a 14-to-1 ratio, and it sounds like what everybody else experiences. There are a few units around higher ed IT units where there are more women. There aren't that many. One's in, I believe, Minnesota, and it's scary that I can say, hey, Minnesota did a really good job at this really small institution, but in higher ed, at least there aren't that many. And to give another example from higher ed, I had a researcher call me. He was doing research on CIOs in higher ed, and he called me and he said, Deb, I don't know what to do with these data. We lost 11% of our female CIOs last year. And I said, wait, let's think about that. What was your N? And of course it was 9. And so I said, 1 leaving is not a big deal when you look at the N, but we have that problem. At an unnamed research university in the Rocky Mountain West, we had a problem a couple years ago that has been rectified, but a couple years ago, an unnamed computer science department lost half of its female freshman class. Half, because one of them left. So when you're working with small numbers, I mean, the percentages really get skewed quickly. I just wanted to give you a little background on NCWIT. NCWIT is a collaboration, a coalition of organizations around the country. These are some of the founding partners. It stretches through the pipeline. It looks at reform from K-12, and so that's where we've got the Girl Scouts all the way there. Some of these hubs are more for IT professional women. Some of them do research into graduate students, into faculty, the Ingeborg Institute into IT professionals around the country. CCGIT is a hub, and our focus is primarily non-traditional pathways. John, I think you were talking about how do you get women into IT, and I think that when you look at the current population, a lot of them have circled out and around. That they do something else and they retrain. They go to community colleges. Some of them go into the military and then come into IT. So CCGIT really looks at those non-traditional pathways, and so we look at community colleges, and we've done work with military spouses as well. Now, what I love about NCWIT, and it was Olivia who said that we've got a lot of resources, and I have to agree. What NCWIT does is where there's a gap in knowledge about why women are in IT or are not in IT, they support and do primary research in that area. They also collect research into those factors, again, across the board. And then what they do is they distill that research and create resources that somebody can pick up and use. Donna, you've also got a lot where you've got a clearinghouse of practices. What can I do? I want to go in my classroom today and make a difference. What can I do? Here's one little trick that you can do, or one little change in behavior that you can do. So NCWIT does similar things across the board. One of my favorite resources that are there are the programs in a box. And what this does is it takes, so for mentoring, say, or surveying or evaluation, it'll take all the resources you might need and it puts them together and packages them, and they're downloadable with one-pagers. Ours is this one. It's the pipeline in the box, and you've got that handout right here. This pipeline in the box, what it does is we developed this because we talked to CIOs around Colorado, and they said, we really want more, we like bachelor's degrees for people who come in. And so they said, we want you to find us those bachelor degree candidates. And what we figured out was that the community colleges, even if those numbers are lower than what we would like, community colleges have traditionally done a very good job about getting women into computer science and IT, right across the board. At the time we started Pipeline in a Box in Colorado, it was 45%, which was high. It's dropped to about 25 to 30%, depending on the college and depending on the specific program. But community colleges really have the ability, better than I think research universities do, to recruit and retain women, and then, as appropriate and as is desired by the women, to transfer them into four-year programs. So that's where we came up with the idea for the Pipeline in a Box, and I'll be going over primarily the things from this today. If you don't want to hear about transfer, just say, Debbie, quiet, we don't care about transfer. And I'll stop right there. For some women and for some community college students, it makes a whole lot of sense. For others, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Do you have questions? So what we looked at, the way we developed this is we went into the community colleges and we did focus groups with counselors. We corralled as many students as possible to participate in research. I know that our research methods were ethical. I don't know if they were great, but we couldn't get people to come. We couldn't get students to show up. So what we did was we set up a table and we put pizza out in the afternoon and we put donuts and coffee out in the morning. So our results are skewed toward hungry students. We understand that, but what we did was we wanted to understand what are the perceptions you have, and it sounds like it's Lisa, right? A lot of the research that you're doing, I'm glad there's ECR on it because that's wonderful. Really, what are your perceptions of IT? Because we know that there's something about IT that's pushing you away, and we all know what the myths are. In fact, why don't you tell me? If you talk to your neighbor or your neighbor's great aunt, well, maybe not a great aunt, but an aunt, what do they say about IT? What are the stereotypes that are out there? What's that? You have to be really good at math.
Loner.
A loner.
Geeky.
Geeky.
Long hours.
Long hours.
Inflexible.
Inflexible. Young. Code monkey. There are just some negative things. Dilbert. I don't want to be Dilbert. I don't want to sit in a cubicle. I don't want to be a loner. I don't want to be I don't want to be just looking at code all day. I want to be doing something real with my life. So these are all the challenges. These are the stereotypes that are out there that we have to address. And I have to admit that it happened in my own home. Our 16-year-old son told me that, and we really don't watch this much TV, but he had decided to be an architect because of the sitcom How I Met Your Mother. And he decided that he didn't want to be an architect anymore. He wanted to be a writer for Saturday Night Live. So I just took a deep breath, and of course he said, well, what major should I be? And I said, you should be a computer scientist. Because they'll love you there. It'll be so good. And he said, I don't want to sit in a cubicle. And I thought, my goodness, you hear me come home every day and tell you what I do in IT, and it's still, the myths are so pervasive that even in our own home, where he's got an engineer father and a mother in academic technology, they don't get that there's this breadth of IT and that you're solving real problems. For me, solving problems around learning and teaching it's just thrilling, but I don't think people get that. But in any case, when we were looking at this, we got the students, we talked about the myths, and then we started to talk to the counselors, and that's when we realized we had a little bit of a problem. So we were doing a focus group, and granted it was years ago, and granted we also spread the word, but we had a group of, and these are frontline counselors, not advisors in specific departments. One of them said, I cannot in good conscience recommend that any student who comes to me take even one single computer science course, let alone enroll in computer science or IT. And I did just about the same thing, except I was supposed to, and this is why Lisa's probably better than I am, because I had an interest in this research, and I was just stunned. And I said, why is this? There was another myth that came up was that Uncle Jimmy has been out of work ever since HP went under. And Uncle Jimmy never got a job again. Now, we know something's wrong with Uncle Jimmy besides. But, especially in northern Colorado, and this is stronger in northern Colorado where HP really had, their layoffs had a really big impact. People felt that jobs were being offshored, IT companies were going bust. And even then it was 5 years after the bust. But there was such a perception that there were no jobs that even the counselors were saying, don't even bother with IT. So we knew we had a problem there. So that's why we came up with these 5 different steps for moving forward. We knew we had to make our case. And it wasn't just making the case to the students, because that's another piece of it. But sometimes you even have to make a case to your colleagues. Why is this important? Now, for community college faculty, I don't know, I was in another session over there today, and somebody said, if you don't get students jobs, you'll lose your job. And I can't remember who it was, but I was taken aback by that. He was somebody from the chancellor's office, and he was selling his product. The net app. No, the other guy. It was another guy in the corner from the chancellor's office. He said, "You're being funded on Perkins grant, and if your students don't get jobs with him, not quite like that, but then you'll lose your job." But what is good is that you can really make the case that if we recruit more women into IT, we up our numbers, and that's a good thing for everybody. The counselors are a big piece of it. As we are taking Pipeline in the Box around Colorado, we are insisting that there are teams of ICT, ITCS faculty, and counselors, because everybody has to be on the same page with it. Administrators, and then also, as this is a goal for your campus, to 4-year partners. What we have found too, and I'm sorry to say even at CU Boulder, we probably have 2 faculty out of 40 who say, hey, community college students, awesome, great pool, talented, they know what they're doing, they come in with a different skill set, they really give balance to our classrooms, and the rest of them say, they have to retake Java because you teach it differently at community colleges. So you kind of run into, and I won't gloss that or gloss over that a lot. And once you've made your case, what we recommend is that you really do build teams. Again, right now we have an ATE grant. That's the Advanced Technology Education Grant, and so we're only focused on two-year colleges. But even within the community colleges, again, we're insisting on at least counselors and faculty. A lot of them are bringing partners from K-12 because they're recognizing community colleges in Colorado are recognizing that they've got a pipeline that they can draw from in the K-12. But also, again, talking to the counselors, administrators, and partners. What we have in Pipeline in a Box are things like this right here, which is a template for a PowerPoint presentation for your first meeting with this team. We've got emails, like boilerplate, that you can use. You can just list and say, hi, my name is blah, 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 and then the rest of the email is written for you. You just have to kind of, put in your school's name here instead of your school's name here. Let's see. So then, as a team, what you need to do is start to recruit. And Amanda, this might be appropriate for you too. When we started to test, after we got feedback from the students, we started to develop materials. And then we took it back out and said, hey, does this make you more likely or less likely to go into IT? I mean, pretty basic stuff. And some of the messages that really resonated, particularly with community college students and particularly with community college women, were good pay, local, local, local. So what we're finding is that a lot of first-generation students want to stay local. They don't really want to go anyplace else. There's one recruiting video, and I'll give an example of it in a little bit, from the University of Washington. And when we showed that to community college people, they said, that's not me. Those people are going to, in Colorado, those people are going to San Francisco. They're working for Google. We don't know, but that's not us. We can't go there. So for Colorado, the University of Washington video bombed because they looked too hip. They looked young. They looked too cool. They had really expensive equipment. And so it wasn't a possible sell for the community college students. So one thing when you're looking at some of the recruitment materials that are out there, you do have to be careful about what you show to your students or to the K-12 students that you're recruiting, because it may not work for them. It may just be too distant or too different from their experience. We also found that a lot of women said, well, I want to do business. Why would I want to do technology? Or I want to do healthcare. Why would I want to do technology? And what really works for them is saying, why don't you combine the two? And then you're really on top of the heap. Then you've really got skills. It allows you to stay in a field that you love, but it gives you skills in another field that really integrate well. The flexibility, I think, Constance, you were talking about that. Constance, or somebody was talking about flexibility. And then when we worked with the military spouses program, and this kind of goes against the local thing, but for this particular population, they wanted flexibility. What we did for this particular group, for this population, was we lined up modules at a community college that could be, and then the next step, if we can get funding for this, is to do it all as online modules, and then work together with a placement firm called Volt, which puts people in temporary positions around the country. And that way, they were always employees of Volt, so it didn't matter if they were relocated from one place to another. Volt was always there, so they always had temporary positions with Volt. And then convincing them that it's a woman thing. And that's difficult. I don't know if you've had arguments on your campus. I've heard arguments that C++ is male and Java is female. I mean, I've had weird things, and trying to convince people that IT is creative. It does allow people to look at social problems and solve social problems. So some of the things that we came up with were posters, and again, these are all in the box, and you can download them. I don't care if you rip them. I don't care if you do anything with them. You make them your own, do whatever, but we know that these messages work. So this one's probably my least favorite because if I think through it too much, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But the big picture is you can earn a lot more money in computing than you can being a home nurse, for instance. However, you do have to do that initial layout of going to school. It's a woman thing. This is one of my favorites only because I got in big trouble. I got somebody to let us into the server, into the data center, and I wasn't allowed. I didn't have the clearance for that. And they caught me saying, just pretend you're pushing that button there. And then I was never allowed in there again. So it's a woman thing.
And I think that's really true. You see books and people doing IT, 90% are men.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it is. It's pervasive.
It is.
It's subliminal. How long has this been taken now?
About 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, and this is the first year that we've been able to have the resources to really take it on the road. And if you do download it, and I'll show you where to download it, if you could please click the button that says, yes, here's my email. That would be really helpful. I like this one because it was a play on the It Girl. The military didn't like it. They said it was not nice to call women girls. And I thought, well, at least you're evolved. That's nice. I won't complain. This was another one of our military posters. And this was one that talks about, hey, these are all the different things you can do with technology. And then the last one was, if you do use the University of Washington career video, some discussion questions you can use. We have a CCGIT video on YouTube, and I think my student made up a channel called The CCGIT, which is fine, but you can find that there. And that's more, it's a little bit more of a diverse population. It's talking about more local things. But that was fun to make. The other thing that we found, and again, this is for a 4-year transfer, that transfer in Colorado is not easy in computer science. I know that California always brags to us, and they say, well, we've got these great articulation agreements. You're shaking your head.
One of those committees, statewide committees.
No good, huh?
Right. It's like, when kids call and they say, we will not, I mean, don't get me started.
Okay.
I've been going to the same meeting, they changed it with CAN codes. It was LDTP transfer, now it's CIT.
I know.
And they're supposed, we're mandated to have transfers from community colleges. I thought the CS would be easy, pretty easy, CS1 to assembly language architecture, discrete math. No. Sarah, they think no.
No.
So I don't know where that's going to go. Hopefully, somebody's going to
I can move to concentrate, but I agree with you.
And my idea would be lock everybody in a room after this.
No food and water, but that idea did go over.
Try to transfer. Just try to transfer. Yeah, the general ed requirements for CSU versus UC are totally different.
Exactly. Well, what we have in Colorado is computer science courses transfer, but they count as gen ed. And they don't count toward the major.
And then they make them retake.
So that's a problem.
So what we have figured is we interviewed students who successfully transferred, and there's something that we call the path of least resistance, that they have figured out how to do it. And so the students have figured it out before any of us adults have.
Now this is the retain and graduate them. The other thing that I did was when we went through names, if you know the names of your students, you tend to retain them. At research universities, they don't tend to know the names of their students, and that's one of the problems. The other problem is, and again, community colleges are good at this. Research universities are not. Don, I heard you talk about it today, and I call this the Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom symptom, which is, I'm going to ask a question now. But it really isn't a question. It's just to show you how much I know. So let me go on and talk about myself for 5 minutes. And men tend to do this, and not all men, but some men. And it tends to intimidate not just women, but anybody who isn't like that person who's exhibiting this wild kingdom behavior.
I like that.
Uh-huh.
And I think when you get out into the workforce, there's a lot of people like that.
Yes. Not that I know any right off the bat. I don't work with any, but yeah.
When my husband comes over to the engineering job, sometimes he forgets to take that hat off.
Sorry, can't do that. Yep. And even, coming down to this mentoring piece, mentoring women about this. What do you do when you're confronted with that kind of behavior? Because you don't have to put up with it, and nobody likes it. Nobody really does, men or women. Peer programming, sending women to regional conferences, and then allowing women to solve social problems through computing. These are, projects you can do in classes. Again, I just have to refer to Donna's resources on this too, because there are a lot of things that you can do in class. Now, I think I'm running short on time, but I wanted to make sure you didn't go at home empty-handed, and I wanted to refer you to the documents that you have, and then allow time for questions. By the numbers, I love. You can download it, print it out, hand it to administrators, hand it to parents, hand it to students. There's also some talking points that you can have for, I think these are the smaller ones, for what is IT, why should young people go into IT, and if you like to do these things, maybe you should go to community college. And then the program in the box is there as well. You can find all these online at ncwit.org. They're all in the pipeline in a box. So if you go to ncwit.org and go to resources right here, and then to NCWIT resources, it takes you here. My favorites, again, are the program in the box and then the talking points. Talking points are just real short and almost elevator speeches. And then program in a box and pipeline in a box. And then you can download the complete box here, but beware, it's huge and massive. And I apologize, but you won't be looking for anything to read for a long time. And now what I'd like to do, I almost forgot about this, is, if I can find it, there it is figure out what your action item is. And so action item. So based on what you've heard today, and it could be in this presentation or it could be another, and everybody does get 2 cards, I'd like to know, if you can take 2, that's correct, what are you going to do when you get that? What is it that you're going to do? Because everybody came here wanting some sort of change. They wanted to affect change or do something different. What have you learned today? What I'd like you to do is write it twice. I'd like to write it once on each card. And then when you're done, just, I don't know, put your head on the table, pretend to take a nap. Can I ask you a question? Sure.
So how successful were you? I mean, have you been tracking your numbers? Have you tracked your numbers? I mean, how many women were in these programs?
We're starting right now.
And how long has your program been in place?
Well, the pipeline in box has been out there for a while. We haven't had enough people download it and click and say, track me, and that's why we got this grant to study it. So we've just had our first workshop in November, and we've got action teams that are out there collecting their numbers right now, so we're going to distribute it a little bit. Hopefully it'll be wildly successful by next year, and then I'll be able to come back and say,
This was going to be successful.
So when you've had it written down twice, what I want you to do is find somebody else in the room and give them one of your cards. And then you walk home with 2 action items. Isn't that awesome, too, for the price of 1? And if you could just discuss with that person what you're planning on doing and why, that would be wonderful. And do you have any other questions about what we've gone over? No? And I feel for you.
I'm sorry. Thank you all.
Going to
You should all charge me for this. An hour of training. 6 more months that I'm going to Florida.
So I really feel for you for this.
So after yesterday's reading an article yesterday on SSK, I think that's what was Chronicle or something like that. And then, of course, then you see your house, and then you see that there's one shop, I believe they have a veterinary section program. They're telling them, we're doing like this, okay, they only have 90 drugs that are